The restaurant didn't smell like food. It smelled like money pretending to be harmless. Truffle butter drifted through the air like a signature. Crystal glasses chimed with that soft, expensive confidence. Outside the tall windows, Chicago was being erased, wind dragging snow sideways in white sheets, streetlights dimmed to bruised halos. Inside, warmth had rules, and Nia Walker lived by them. 24 years old, black uniform pressed clean though the hem was fraying, hair pinned back tight because loose strands invited comments. She moved between tables like she was trained to become invisible, smile, serve, disappear. That was the job. That was survival. At table 7, a man in a cashmere coat spoke too loudly about profit margins while his date laughed at nothing. At table 9, had a woman photographed her dessert before taking a bite, as if the sweetness needed proof. Nia carried plates, refilled glasses, swallowed her own hunger. She hadn't eaten since noon. There was a sandwich in her locker, peanut butter, cheap bread, wrapped in wax paper. It wasn't a snack. It was her bridge to tomorrow. Rent was due in 4 days. Grandma Ruth's cough had been worse this week. Nia had learned to measure life in small units: bus fare, medicine, bread. At 11:17 p.m., the last dinner rush thinned into quiet. The manager, Mr. Halverson, snapped his fingers for attention like it was a language. "Finish your sections," he said. "No loitering, no freebies. We're not a charity." "Yes, sir," the staff murmured, because even words cost energy. Nia wiped down her station, hands aching from disinfectant and cold water. When in the kitchen, a cook cursed at a broken timer. Someone laughed. Someone yawned. Then Nia saw him. At first she thought he was part of the shadows by the service entrance, just a shape where the light didn't reach, but he moved, and the movement was too slow, too careful. A man. White, early 30s maybe, too thin for a city like this. He stood just outside the glass door, pressed near the brick wall as if trying to borrow warmth from it. His coat was wrong for the weather, thin, unzipped, collar turned up like a weak defense. Snow clung to his hair and melted down his temples. His hands were bare, and his eyes. His eyes kept drifting toward the kitchen window where plates passed by, toward the warm light where food existed without mercy. Not like a predator, like a person drowning, watching a shoreline he couldn't reach. Nia's throat tightened. She had seen hunger before. Hunger lived in her apartment some nights when the refrigerator held only mustard and a tired carton of eggs. Hunger lived in Grandma Ruth's careful shopping lists and the way she said, "We got enough for today," as if today was all anyone deserved. But this man's hunger looked different. It looked abandoned. A bus hissed by in the street, spraying slush. The man flinched at the sound, like his body didn't trust anything anymore. Mr. Halverson noticed him too. His face hardened the way it always did when reality tried to enter the restaurant without a reservation. He pushed the door open a crack and barked, "You can't be here. Move along." The man tried to speak. No sound came out. He swallowed, tried again, and his voice was a rough scrape. I'm not asking for trouble." "Then don't cause any," Halverson snapped. "Go!" The door shut. Nia stood frozen with a towel in her hands. She told herself what everyone always told themselves. Not your problem. You can't save everyone. You don't have enough. But the man remained outside, shoulders hunched, breathing shallow, as if his lungs were negotiating with the cold. Nia turned, walked to her locker, and opened it. The sandwich waited. Small, ordinary, necessary. Her hands hovered over it like it was a confession. If she gave it away, there was nothing else. No extra money, no backup, just a long night and a longer morning. Then she remembered Grandma Ruth's voice, steady, unromantic, the way truth usually sounded. "Baby, we may not have much, but we always share what we got." Nia swallowed. She unwrapped the sandwich. She placed it into a paper bag and tucked in a juice box she'd saved from a staff meal 2 days ago. She didn't think about consequences. She just walked. Outside, the wind hit her like punishment. The man looked up, startled, as Nia stepped into the snow and held the bag out through the crack of the service door. His eyes widened. He didn't reach for it right away, like he didn't trust miracles. "I'm not," he began. "Just take it," Nia whispered, voice trembling more than the weather. "Please." His hands shook as he accepted the bag. He opened it and stared like the food might vanish if he blinked. Then he took a bite, fast, desperate, painful. He chewed like his body was remembering how to live. Tears slid down his cheeks without permission. He wiped them with the back of his wrist, furious at his own weakness. "Oh, thank you," he rasped. I didn't think anyone would." Nia's chest tightened. "What's your name?" He swallowed hard. "Evan." Just Evan. Nia nodded as if that was enough to hold him in the world. "I'm Nia," she said. Evan stared at her like he was trying to memorize her face before it disappeared. Nia took a step back, the cold already seeping into her shoes, and closed the door softly. Inside, warmth returned. But it didn't feel the same. Because somewhere in the snow, a man named Evan was eating her tomorrow. And Nia didn't know yet what that would cost her. Yet. The first night was impulse. A spark. A single decision made before fear could gather its arguments. The second night demanded something harder. A choice. Nia woke before her alarm, as staring at the ceiling of her small bedroom while the radiator clicked and wheezed like it was tired of pretending. The air smelled faintly of yesterday's rice and the lemon cleaner Grandma Ruth used to make their old apartment feel less defeated. Her stomach wasn't hungry yet. It was warning her. In the kitchen, Grandma Ruth stood at the counter, robe tied tight, hair wrapped in a scarf. She moved quietly, efficiently, as if loudness wasted what little the day might give. Nia watched the familiar ritual. 2 slices of bread, peanut butter scraped thin, the lid of the lunchbox snapped shut like a final word. It should have comforted her. Instead, it felt like a question sitting heavy in her chest. Because outside the restaurant, in a pocket of shadow by the service door, there was a man whose hands had shaken when he took food. Yeah, a man whose eyes had looked like the world had already made its decision about him. And Nia had interrupted that decision. She cleared her throat. "Grandma?" Grandma Ruth didn't look up. I gave my food away last night." The knife paused. Only for a second. Then kept moving, spreading peanut butter with the same slow pressure, as if her hands refused panic on principle. Grandma Ruth didn't ask why. She'd lived too long to confuse kindness with foolishness. "To who?" she asked softly. Nia swallowed. A man outside the restaurant. He was starving. Grandma Ruth's eyes lifted then. Tired eyes, sharp eyes, eyes that had carried poverty without letting it rot her heart. "Did he eat?" Naya nodded quickly, like he hadn't eaten in days. Grandma Ruth lowered her gaze and pressed the lunchbox closed. Click. Final. Then she said the sentence that always sounded like gravity in their home. Baby, we may not have much, but we always share what we got. Naya's throat tightened. But if I do it again, I'll be hungry. Yes, Grandma Ruth said, calm as dawn. You will. Naya waited for the "so don't." It didn't come. Instead, Grandma Ruth opened the cabinet above the stove and pulled down a second paper bag, creased, reused, softened by time. She reached for the bread again. Nia blinked. Grandma, we don't have enough. Grandma Ruth didn't stop. We got enough for today. The words were simple, but Nia understood what they really meant. We will make it enough. By the time Nia left for her shift, the paper bag sat in her backpack like something fragile and important. It wasn't much. Half a sandwich wrapped tight, a banana that bruised easily, or a juice box Grandma Ruth insisted on, even though she'd sighed when she bought it. Nia rode the bus downtown with her hands folded in her lap, watching the city drift by in grey layers. Chicago looked clean in the morning from a distance. Up close, it looked like people learned to freeze without complaining. At the restaurant, the day moved with its usual polished cruelty. Tables filled, orders snapped, glasses clinked, and Nia's eyes kept sliding toward the service entrance. She told herself he wouldn't be there. He had eaten. He would move on. That's what people did when they could. But at 10:46 p.m., when the dinner crowd thinned and the lights dimmed, Nia saw him again. Evan. He stood in almost the same place, shoulders hunched, coat still too thin, hair damp from snow. But now he wasn't just waiting for warmth. Oh, he was waiting for her. The realization hit Nia like a hand closing around her throat. She should have been angry at him for coming back, for making her choice harder. Instead, she felt something worse. Responsibility. She slipped out through the service door, the cold biting through her shoes immediately. Evan's head lifted when he saw her, and his eyes widened like he didn't trust what he was seeing. You came, he whispered, as if the words were too delicate to hold. I said I would, Nia answered, but her voice wasn't steady. Evan swallowed hard. I didn't think you meant it. Nia didn't have an answer for that. She reached into her backpack and pulled out the paper bag. Evan stared at it like it was dangerous. That's too much, he said quickly, stepping back as if refusing could protect her. Nia almost laughed, but the sound died in her chest. It's not too much. Just take it. His hands trembled when he accepted it, not greedily this time. Carefully, like he was afraid it might disappear if he moved too fast. He opened it, inhaled as if smell alone could keep him alive. Why? He asked. The question landed heavy. Why did she do it? Because she was kind? Because she was stupid? Because she couldn't bear what she had seen? Nia swallowed, feeling the truth settle in her ribs. Because you're hungry, she said simply. And because nobody else is helping you. Evan's jaw tightened. He looked away, blinking too fast. My mom. His voice cracked. She's gone. Nia's chest ached. I'm sorry. He shrugged, but it didn't look like indifference. It looked like pain turned into armor. Doesn't matter. It mattered. She didn't ask how. Oh, some wounds didn't want fingers near them. What about family? Naya asked instead, softer. Evan's eyes flicked back to hers. Don't have any. A gust of wind cut between them. Naya's fingers went numb on the door handle. Something inside her wanted to reach for him, to touch his hand, to offer comfort through skin. But the restaurant door was a boundary, a rule, a reminder. So Nia did the only thing she could. She stayed. She watched him eat until his shoulders stopped trembling. She listened to the quiet sound of someone returning to life one bite at a time. When he finished, he lifted his gaze again, less empty now, more startled by the possibility of being seen. "Thank you," he said, quieter. Nia nodded, as if she could keep her own heart from cracking by pretending it was simple. But when she stepped back inside, her warmth did not comfort her, because she realized something with sudden clarity. The first sandwich had been mercy. The second one had become a pattern, and patterns cost. She leaned against the wall, breathing hard, and imagined tomorrow, her hunger, Grandma Ruth's tired hands, the restaurant's rules. Then she heard Mr. Halverson's voice from the kitchen, sharp as a knife. "Nia, don't tell me you're feeding strays out there." Nia straightened slowly, her heart hammered. The price of coming back had just arrived. Nia did not answer Mr. Halverson right away. She stood with her back against the wall, cold still clinging to her bones, the smell of snow trapped in her hair. The restaurant hummed behind her, plates sliding, voices rising, the world continuing as if nothing fragile had just happened outside its door. "Mr. Halverson folded his arms. "Well?" "I was taking out trash," Nia said. It was not a good lie. It was not meant to be. His eyes narrowed. "We're not running a soup kitchen." Nia met his gaze, something steadier than fear holding her upright. "I know." "Then keep it that way." He turned and walked back into the kitchen, already done with her. Nia exhaled slowly. Her hands were shaking now, but she forced them still. Survival did not ask for permission. It only asked for balance. That night, she rode the bus home with her stomach empty and her thoughts loud. Grandma Ruth was already asleep, her medicine bottle lined neatly beside her bed, like a promise the body did not always keep. Nia lay awake, listening to the radiator argue with the cold, seeing Evan's face every time she closed her eyes. The next evening she brought less food. Not because she cared less, because she had learned the shape of limits. Half a sandwich, a small apple. No juice this time. She folded the paper bag tight and hid it beneath her jacket as if kindness were contraband. He was there again. Not in the same place. Closer to the door now, where the light touched him a little. His coat was still thin, his eyes still cautious. But he stood straighter, as if one night of food had reminded his spine that it was allowed to exist. When he saw her, his mouth parted in something like disbelief. "You came again?" he said. Nia nodded. "Don't make it a big thing." Evan almost smiled. She handed him the bag. He took it, then hesitated. "You don't have to do this," he said. "I know." "Then why—" "Eat!" she interrupted, softer than a command, harder than a suggestion. He did. Slower this time, more human, like someone who expected to finish. They stood in silence for a few minutes, the city moving around them, sirens in the distance, snow whispering against brick. Finally, Evans spoke. "I used to work in an office." Nia glanced at him. "Used to?" He nodded. "Had a desk, a badge, a plant that kept dying." That surprised a small laugh out of her. "What happened?" He shrugged. "Company folded. Mom got sick. Hospital bills ate the rest. Then everything else followed." Nia watched his face as he spoke. Not dramatic, not begging, just telling. "Where do you sleep?" she asked. "Where I can," Evan answered. "Library when it's open. Bus station if I can stay quiet. Doorways if I can't." Nia's throat tightened. "Does anyone know?" He shook his head. "They don't look." That was the truest thing he'd said. They talked like that for a few minutes. Pieces of life traded carefully, like glass that could cut if dropped. Evan told her he liked numbers because they didn't pretend, that he once dreamed of opening a small business, that cold made his bones feel older than they were. Nia told him about Grandma Ruth, about working double shifts, about how she counted money like prayers. Neither of them said the word poor. It wasn't needed. On the fourth night, Evan brought something of his own, a folded piece of paper. "I found this," he said, unfolding it carefully. It was a bus map, creased and torn, lines crossing like veins. "I keep thinking, if I go far enough, maybe I won't be this anymore." Nia studied it. "Running doesn't change hunger." Evan gave a crooked smile. "You sound like someone who learned that already." "Maybe," she said. She did not tell him she worried about him leaving. She did not tell him she feared what staying would cost. Instead, she asked, "What's your last name?" He hesitated. "Cole. Evan Cole." The name settled between them like a small stone. "I'm Nia Walker," she said. He nodded, as if storing it somewhere safe. That night, when she returned inside, Mr. Halverson watched her from the counter. "You're getting attached," he said. Nia wiped her hands on her apron. "I'm feeding someone." "Same thing." She did not answer, because she was beginning to understand something dangerous. Evan was no longer just a man outside the door. He was becoming a story with a shape, a person with a past, and people with pasts did not disappear easily, not from the cold, not from memory, and not from her. Snow did not fall that night. It hovered, and the sky pressed low over the city, heavy with a silence that felt like it was waiting to make a decision. Streetlights glowed like tired moons. The wind moved without direction, touching windows and retreating as if unsure what it wanted. Nia finished her shift with hands that felt too light. All evening, her eyes kept drifting to the service door. Not because she expected trouble, because she expected Evan. By now, his presence had become part of the night's rhythm, like the clink of dishes or the scrape of chairs. He waited where the light ended. She brought what she could. They spoke in pieces and left the rest for tomorrow. Except tonight. Tomorrow did not seem certain. At 10:52 p.m., Nia stepped outside. Cold swallowed her immediately. The brick wall was empty. The snow on the ground showed no fresh footprints, showed only the memory of earlier ones filled in by wind. "Evan?" she called softly. Her voice vanished into the air. She waited. 30 seconds. A minute. She walked to the edge of the alley, peering toward the bus stop where people sometimes slept standing up. Nothing. No thin coat. No careful posture. no eyes that lifted when she said his name. The city felt wider without him. Nia stood there longer than she meant to, fingers numb around the paper bag she still held. It contained half a sandwich and an apple with a bruise shaped like a map. She set the bag against the wall where he usually stood, just in case. Inside, the restaurant felt louder. Mr. Halverson noticed her pause by the window. "Break's over," he said, not unkindly, not kind either. "World keeps turning." Nia nodded and returned to wiping counters that did not need wiping. On the bus home, she watched reflections of strangers slide across the dark glass. She imagined Evan on another bus, going somewhere warmer. She imagined him in a shelter with a bed and a cup of soup. She imagined him anywhere but where she could see him. Hope made its own weather. At the apartment, Grandma Ruth was awake, wrapped in a blanket, watching late news without sound. Her eyes lifted when Nia entered. "He come back?" she asked. Nia shook her head. Grandma Ruth nodded once, as if that was an answer that fit the world. "Sometimes help looks like a door," she said. "Sometimes it looks like a road." Nia sat at the small table and did not eat. She held the apple in her palm until the bruise warmed. The next night, Evan was not there. Nor the next. By the third night, the space outside the service door felt like a held breath that never released. Nia began to notice things she hadn't before. The way the brick wall carried a darker stain where his shoulder had rested. The scrap of bus map wedged near the drain. A single glove trapped in a fence across the alley. Objects without owners. Evidence without witness. On the fourth night, snow finally fell. It came straight down, soft and steady, covering the alley in a clean lie. Nia stepped outside with the paper bag and stopped. The stain was gone. The ground was new. There were no footprints to follow. She crouched and set the bag down anyway, tucking it close to the wall so the wind wouldn't take it. She waited until the cold pressed into her knees and her breath began to hurt. No one came. Inside, while the manager counted receipts, a couple argued quietly over dessert. The kitchen argued loudly over nothing. Nia felt something hollow where habit had been. At home, she lay awake listening to the radiator talk. She thought about Evan's bus map and the way he had said running didn't change hunger. She wondered if staying did. By the end of the week, the space outside the door had become just another shadow. But Nia did not let it be nothing. She kept a paper bag in her locker. She kept the memory in the same place she kept money, carefully, folded, ready for when it might be needed. She did not tell herself a story about rescue. She told herself a story about a man who had eaten and moved on. And that was supposed to be enough. Years later, she would understand that leaving is not the same as disappearing. Oh, that empty places remember. That some kindness travels farther than feet. But that night, all she knew was this. The doorway was empty. And the cold had won a small, quiet argument. Time did what it always did. It passed without asking permission. The restaurant changed owners twice. The menu grew longer. The prices grew sharper. The lights stayed warm, but the warmth meant something else now. Polish instead of comfort, performance instead of shelter. Nia stayed. Not because she dreamed of trays and wine lists, because survival had roots. At 32, her hair carried threads of silver she did not remember earning. Her hands moved with the certainty of repetition. She knew which tables wanted silence and which wanted to be seen. She knew how to smile without promising anything she could not give. Grandma Ruth had died 3 winters ago, quietly, with her hands folded like she was still counting something. Nia now measured days in double shifts and bus routes, in rent paid and shoes replaced one season too late. She had learned not to look for men in doorways. She had learned not to expect endings. On a Thursday evening in early December, the manager called a staff meeting. "We have a private event tonight," he said. "High profile, no mistakes." There was a list. Names that meant nothing to Nia until she reached the last one. Evan Cole. She blinked at the paper. The name was a coincidence. It had to be. She had not said it aloud in years. Not since the bus map folded itself into memory. Not since the door learned to be empty. "Who's Evan Cole?" a younger server asked. The manager's mouth lifted into something like reverence. "Real estate, tech investments, net worth in the billions. Treat him like glass." Nia folded the list and slid it into her apron. A name could be anyone. At 7:42 p.m., black cars lined the curb outside. Men in coats that did not know cold stepped out. Women with earrings that could buy months followed. The room tightened itself into obedience. Nia carried water to table 1. The man who sat there did not look like money. He looked like restraint. Dark suit, clean lines, a posture that kept its distance from everything. His hair was cut with intention. His hands rested on the table as if they did not belong to it yet. He looked up when she approached, and time stopped being polite. The eyes were the same. Not the hunger, not the hollow, but the shape of attention. The way he saw, not glanced. Nia's breath caught somewhere between her chest and the glass she was holding. He stared at her, not like a customer, like a person who had reached the end of a map. "Good evening," she said, because language survived even when certainty did not. "Good evening," he replied. His voice was steadier than memory, lower, controlled. But it carried the same pause before words, as if each one needed to be weighed. "May I start you with something to drink?" Nia asked. He did not answer right away. He studied her face the way one studies weather after surviving it. "Do you still wrap sandwiches in wax paper?" he asked quietly. The room tilted. Nia felt her hand tighten around the tray. "I'm sorry," she said. He exhaled, slow. "You once gave me one."
"In the snow."
The years rushed back without invitation. The service door, the thin coat, the way he ate like his body was learning. Her throat closed. "Evan?" she whispered. He nodded once. "Nia." The name sat between them like something found. "I didn't know if you would remember me," he said. "I didn't know if you were real," she answered. He almost smiled. Around them the restaurant continued. Orders taken, laughter rising, glasses touching. But at table 1, a different story had found its seat. They spoke without touching. Not about money, not about loss, about winter, about the door, about how a night can decide things without telling you first. "I left," Evan said. "I had to." Nia nodded. "I waited." "I tried to come back," he said. "I couldn't find you." "I stayed," she replied. I didn't know where else to go." He looked at her like that was an answer. "I never forgot," he said. "Not the food. The way you said my name like it mattered." Nia felt something soften behind her ribs. She set the water down. "You should eat," she said. He smiled finally. "I will." She turned away before the past could sit down with them. Her hands shook as she wrote his order. Behind her, the kitchen shouted. Ahead of her, The room waited. And somewhere between a doorway and a table, a promise had changed clothes. Evan did not order much. Soup, bread, something warm, not because he could not afford anything else, but because habit still lived in him like an old language. Nia watched him eat from a distance, carrying plates to other tables, refilling glasses that tasted like decisions she would never be asked to make. And every movement felt borrowed, as if the night might wake up and take it back. When his plate was empty, he waited. Not for dessert, for her. She came when she could no longer pretend not to. "Are you okay?" she asked. It was a foolish question. "I am," Evan said. "I wasn't." That was the truer answer. They found a corner near the service hallway where noise softened into breathing. The kitchen door swung open and closed like a pulse. Steam drifted past them like memory trying to pass as weather. "I didn't leave because I wanted to," Evan said. "I left because I was found." Nia frowned. "Found?" "A shelter worker. He saw me sleeping on a bus, took me in, gave me a coat that fit." He paused. "Told me to stop pretending I didn't want to live." Nia said nothing. Her heart had learned how to listen. "I stayed there 3 weeks," Evan continued. "Got work washing dishes, saved enough to rent a room with 2 other men who didn't ask questions." He smiled faintly. "Numbers helped. I counted every dollar, every hour. It made the future look possible." "And the money?" Nia asked quietly. He looked at his hands. "An investor took a risk. I took more. I failed twice. Then once I didn't." He lifted his eyes to hers. "But none of it started with business. It started with a sandwich." Nia felt the words settle in her like a stone dropped into water. "You didn't owe me a life," she said. "I know," Evan replied. "That's why it stayed." They stood there, the distance between them shaped like the years they could not walk back. "I looked for you," he said. "I went to the restaurant, new manager, no records. I walked the block in winter and told myself the city would give you back if it wanted to." "And it did," Nia said. "Tonight," he said. "By accident," she answered. "Nothing like that feels like accident," Evan said. There was a beat of silence that wanted to become something else. Evan reached into his jacket and pulled out a card, thick, quiet, the kind that carried weight. "I can help you," he said. "Now. Today. Rent. A better job. A better place." Nia looked at the card as if it were a door she did not trust. "I don't need saving," she said. "I didn't mean—" "I know what you meant," she interrupted gently. "And I'm grateful. But money can fix a night. It can't fix a pattern." Evan studied her face like he was learning a map that did not move. "What would fix it?" he asked. "Or a way out that doesn't depend on luck," Nia said. "A bridge, not a gift." The kitchen door slammed. A cook shouted for plates. The room remembered its job. Evan nodded slowly. "Tell me what that bridge looks like." Nia thought of Grandma Ruth's hands, of the door that learned to be empty, of a man who had eaten and kept walking. "People like me," she said. "Servers, dishwashers, the ones who miss one paycheck and meet the cold. We need time, training, a place to land when the ground moves." Evan's eyes sharpened, not with hunger but with focus. "Say it," he said. "A fund," Nia answered. "For workers who fall through cracks, not charity. Structure, rent help with rules, classes with schedules, Jobs with dignity. And you? Evan asked. I stay where I am, she said. So I know what breaks. He considered that, then nodded once.
Let's build it, he said.
Naya felt something in her chest change shape. Not into hope, into work. The manager's voice cut through the hallway. Nia, table 12 needs wine. She stepped back. I have to go, she said. Evan smiled. You always did. She paused. You'll still be here? I will, he said. She returned to the floor, carrying a bottle that cost more than her shoes. The room had learned nothing. But two people had. And somewhere between a sandwich and a suit, a bridge had begun to draw its first line. They did not meet in a cafe. They did not meet in his office. They met in the space between shifts, on a narrow bench behind the restaurant where the smell of garlic and detergent mixed into something honest. Naya kept her apron on. Evan kept his coat buttoned, as if money might leak out if he wasn't careful. Say it again, Evan said. Not like a dream, like a plan. Naya stared at the alley wall, where posters peeled like old skin. People don't fall because they're lazy, she said. They fall because there's no time to stand up. Evan waited. When Grandma Ruth got sick, Nia continued, I missed 2 shifts. 2. Rent didn't care. The bus didn't care. The pharmacy didn't care. I didn't become poor that week. I just ran out of minutes. Evan nodded. He understood minutes. So what does your bridge look like? He asked. Naya counted on her fingers. Short-term rent help, but only with a plan attached. Not endless. 6 months. Enough to breathe. Conditions, Evan said. Structure, Naya corrected. Job training at night. Certifications that mean something. So a caseworker who doesn't disappear every time the budget does. Evan scribbled on the back of a receipt. Numbers grew into columns. How many people? Start small, Nia said. 10. Restaurant workers, cleaners, the ones who live on tips and luck. And who decides? Evan asked. Not you alone, she said, and not me alone. A board with people who've lived it. He smiled. You want oversight. I want it to survive us, she answered. The bench went quiet. Inside, a server laughed too loudly at a joke that wasn't funny. Outside, a truck coughed awake. Evan folded the receipt and put it in his pocket like a promise. I can fund the first year. Nia looked at him. I won't run it for you. I wouldn't ask, he said. I want you to run it with me. They shook hands like adults who knew better than to pretend this was romance. So the next week, Evan's lawyers drafted papers with words like eligibility and duration. Nia crossed out sentences that smelled like control and wrote in ones that smelled like time. They called it the Bridge Fund. Applications opened quietly. No press, no speeches. By Friday, there were 30 names. A dishwasher with 3 kids and a broken ankle. A barista sleeping in her car. A server whose tips vanished when the winter did. They chose 10. Not the loudest, not the saddest. The ones who could use a pause without breaking. Naya met them in a borrowed room above a bakery. Flour dusted the windows. The chairs did not match. This isn't a favor, she said. It's a contract. We help with rent. You go to class. You meet your caseworker. You show up. A man raised his hand. What if I fail? Then we try again, Naya said. But not alone. Evan stood in the back and watched, not like an owner, like a student. The first check went out on Monday, not in envelopes, direct deposit, because dignity did not need ceremony. 2 weeks later, the dishwasher texted a photo of his cast-off. The barista sent a screenshot of her class schedule. The server sent a message with no picture at all. I slept 8 hours. Evan read that one twice. The manager noticed the changes first. "Nia," he said, squinting. "You walking lighter?" She shrugged. "Maybe the floor got nicer." He did not believe her. The city did not notice. Not yet. The bridge fund did not save anyone from winter. It saved them from the first night. From the doorway that learned to be empty, Evan and Nia met again on the bench. "This isn't scalable," Evan said. "Oh, it's repeatable," Nia answered. He smiled. "You're dangerous," she smiled back. "You're useful." They stood and looked at the street where people passed with their collars up and their eyes down. "Next," Evan said. "Next," Nia agreed, because a bridge only mattered if someone crossed it. The bridge fund did not announce itself. It arrived like weather. Quiet. Persistent. Unavoidable. By the third month, there were 20 names on the wall above Nia's desk. Handwritten. No photos. Just first names and a single goal beside each one. GED, HV, AC, phlebotomy, CDL, kitchen management. Evan paid for the walls. Nia paid attention to what leaned against them. They moved out of the bakery room into a narrow office over a pawn shop. The sign outside said vacancy even when it was full. Inside, the lights buzzed like they were thinking about quitting. The coffee was always wrong. The chairs were still unmatched. But the door stayed open. The first crisis came on a Tuesday. A woman named Rosa didn't show for class. She missed the caseworker meeting and didn't answer her phone. By evening, Nia was walking the block where Rosa cleaned houses, knocking on doors that didn't know her. Rosa was in a stairwell with her ankle wrapped in a towel and a look that said she had been negotiating with pain all day. "I slipped," she said. "Didn't want to lose the job." Nia knelt. "You didn't lose us." They called a clinic. They found a ride. Evan paid the copay without saying it out loud. That night, Nia added a line to the rules. Medical counts. The second crisis came from money, and the landlord of one participant raised rent mid-lease, legal but cruel. Evan wanted to buy the building. Nia wanted to fight the clause. They argued. "Buying it solves it," Evan said. "Buying it teaches them to wait for buyers," Nia said. "Teach the law to work first." They hired a lawyer who liked words and hated shortcuts. The clause was struck. Rent went back down. Nia added another line. No rescue without rights. By the fourth month, the list had doubled. Not because they advertised, because people talk. At the bus stop, in dish pits, between refills. There's a place that gives you time. A reporter found them the way reporters do, by following a rumour with good shoes. She asked Evan for a quote. He gave her Nia. Nia asked for edits. They did not agree on the headline. "Billionaire saves servers." Nia crossed it out. "Workers build a bridge." The paper ran something in between. Phones rang for a week. Donations came with conditions. Nia refused the ones that wanted names on walls. Evan refused the ones that wanted control. They accepted the ones that wanted results. By winter, the first 10 graduated. Not with caps and gowns, with keys. Rosa moved into a studio with a window that faced a wall but felt like sky. The dishwasher passed his exam and sent a photo of his new boots. The barista learned to drive a forklift and laughed like she had stolen a future. They held a meeting in the office that night. No speeches. Pizza on folding tables. Evan watched the room fill with noise and colour. He saw himself in it. Thin once, now whole. He saw Nia in the centre of it, steady as a table leg. "You were right," he said quietly. "Oh, about what?" Nia asked. "About bridges." She wiped her hands on a napkin. "They're loud." The city noticed when numbers arrived. 0 evictions for participants, 90% attendance, 80% job placement. A council aide called, then a council member, then a room with microphones. Evan wore a suit. Nia wore her apron. They spoke the same sentence in different clothes. "This works," Evan said. "This costs less than the street," Nia said. A man in a grey jacket asked, "Why not scale?" Nia answered, "Because people are not spreadsheets." The room leaned forward. They offered a pilot grant, with oversight, with rules, with time. Nia asked for one thing: keep workers on the board. They agreed. The Bridge Fund learned a new word: program. Not to be important, to be protected. That night, Nia walked past the service door of the restaurant and did not stop, not because she forgot, because she had moved the door. Evan waited for her on the bench. "The city wants in," he said. Nia nodded. "Then the city has to learn how to listen." Snow began to fall. Soft. Careful. Like it remembered something. Evan looked up. "Do you ever think about that night?" Nia smiled without turning. "Only when it's cold." They stood there and watched the street become quieter. Not empty. Different. Because a bridge had taught it how. The girl's name was Lena. She was 19 and carried her life in a backpack that smelled faintly of soap and bus seats. She stood in the doorway of the Bridge Fund office with shoulders pulled in, as if the room itself might decide she did not belong. "I heard there's help," she said. "But not the kind that makes you feel small." Nia looked up from a stack of forms and saw the way Lena's eyes kept tracking the floor, counting exits. "You heard right," Nia said. "Come in." Lena sat on the edge of the chair like it was temporary. Her story arrived in pieces. Foster care until 18. A boyfriend who liked to choose for her. A night that ended with a locked door and nowhere to go. She worked mornings at a diner and nights at a grocery store. She slept on a friend's couch that did not belong to the friend. "I don't need charity," Lena said quickly. "I just need time." Nia felt the words land like something she had been waiting for. "That's exactly what this is," she said. They enrolled Lena that afternoon. Housing first. A studio with a window that faced a brick wall but held light like it had learned the job. And a caseworker named Marisol who spoke softly and wrote everything down. A slot in a medical billing course that started at 6 p.m. because Lena's mornings already belonged to work. Evan saw her file and paused. "She's young," he said. "So were you," Nia replied. He did not argue. The first week, Lena slept 12 hours at a time. The second week, she forgot one class and cried in the hallway. Marisol taught her how to set alarms without shame. Nia taught her how to read a lease like it might lie. Evan taught her how to open a bank account and not apologize to the clerk. By the third month, Lena had keys that did not need returning and a badge that said trainee. She came to the office one Friday with a pay stub folded into a square. "I wanted to show you," she said, and then added, "Not because I have to." Nia pinned it to the corkboard under the word firsts. Evan watched from the doorway and saw himself years ago with a sandwich in his hands. He saw Nia in the mirror of time, still standing where doors pretended to be walls. The city called again. They wanted expansion. Another building, another cohort, another promise. Nia asked to meet at the fence behind the restaurant. They went there after work, the two of them standing where snow used to decide things. The brick wall still wore a darker stain. The alley still smelled like night. "I don't want this to become a brand," Nia said. Evan nodded. "I don't want it to become a loophole." They walked along the service entrance until the light thinned. "Let's add one rule," Nia said. "What rule?" "We don't choose people because they make good stories." "Oh, we choose them because the bridge fits." Evan smiled. "That will make fewer headlines." "It will make more mornings," she answered. They took the proposal to the board. Workers stayed on it. Former participants joined it. A landlord sat at the table and learned to listen. The vote passed with conditions that looked like caution and felt like respect. That winter, the program housed 60 people. Not saved. Housed. There was a difference. Lena graduated in May. She brought cake to the office and cut it with a plastic knife that bent like it was proud. "I start full-time Monday," she said. "I'm moving to a place with 2 windows." Nia hugged her first. Evan hugged her after, careful like a man who had learned the weight of promises. On the wall, a new section appeared under firsts, second weeks, third paychecks, 1 year. The fence outside the restaurant gained another ribbon, tied by a hand that shook and then did not. "Why the ribbon?" Lena asked. "So the next one knows where to look," Nia said. That night, the office emptied and the street stayed. Evan stood with Nia under a light that had learned to forgive faces. "We didn't keep the promise the way we thought," Nia said. "We kept it the way it needed," Evan replied. They watched Lena walk down the block with a bag that did not hold her life anymore. A bus passed, a door closed, a window turned on, and the bridge did what bridges do best. It let someone go. The fence was still there. Behind the restaurant, between brick and shadow, iron bars leaned the way old things do, without apology, paint peeled like memory. But the ground beneath it held the shape of winters that had made decisions for people who did not get to vote. Nia stood there with Evan on a late spring evening, when the city smelled almost kind. "You ever think it's strange," she said, "that a place can remember?" Evan touched the cold metal with 2 fingers. "Places don't forget," he said. "People just stop asking them." They had come after the final board meeting of the year. The numbers were clean. 78 housed, 64 employed, 0 returned to the street. But what mattered was not the count. It was the sound. In the community room, laughter had begun to argue with fear. In kitchens, groceries stayed longer than one night. In apartments, lights were left on because darkness was no longer a rule. The city called it a program. Nia called it time. Yeah, they unveiled the plaque without ceremony. No ribbon cutting, no microphones, just a small square of metal bolted to brick, where a choice became a system. Evan watched a group of teenagers walk past, backpacks loose, Faces lifted to something like weather. "Do you ever wish," he asked, "that it had ended differently? That we, you know?" Naya smiled at the fence. "I wish it had ended sooner for you, and later for me." He nodded. "Fair." They did not hold hands. They stood close enough to share the wind. A girl waited near the service door, thin for the season, jacket too light for the evening. She watched the restaurant windows like they might open for her. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you the people?" Naya knelt so their eyes were level. "We are some of them." "I'm hungry," the girl said. "And I don't want to be." Nia stood and opened the door. Inside, the kitchen had a pot of soup still warm from staff meal. A chair waited that did not belong to anyone in particular. A phone number sat on the wall where rules liked to live. They did not ask for a story. They asked for a name. "Lila," the girl said. Evan cut a strip of red cloth from a ribbon they kept in his pocket now, not the old one, but the colour of it. He tied it loosely around her wrist. "It means," he said, "you belong to the next part." Lila held it like a map. Later, the board met in the small office over the pawn shop. A former dishwasher chaired the table. A caseworker read reports. A landlord raised a hand and learned to wait. They voted to expand again, with rent caps, with worker seats, with audits that spoke human. Nia spoke last. "We will not feed for a day," she said. "We will feed for a decade." Evan followed. "We will not rescue. We will protect." The motion passed. Outside, the city settled into its night. Not quiet. Different. On the walk back to the fence, Nia stopped. "Do you know what that sandwich brought you?" she asked. Evan thought of the bus map, the shelter coat, the desk plant that died, the drawer with the ribbon that never did. "It bought me a future," he said. "And what did it charge me?" Naya asked. He looked at her, careful. "Hunger." She nodded. "And time." They stood where a doorway had once learned to be empty. Now it learned to open. A plaque did not change a city. A law did not hold a hand. But together they kept the night from choosing. The fence did not break. It learned to point, to mark, to say, "Start here." And the story did not end with a wedding or a rescue or a miracle that forgot to bring paperwork. It ended with rooms, with roofs, with rules that refused to look away. Because one woman had shared a sandwich, and one man had built a bridge, and a city had finally learned how to answer forever.